I didn't mean to kill her. But the night Matthew called 40 years after he vanished from my life, I swear to God, for one split second, I wanted Julianne Carter Quinn dead. There. That's the truth, bare and ugly. When you hear your own twin brother whisper, "Sam, don't let me die here," with a voice so cracked, it doesn't even sound human anymore. Something inside you snaps. Something old, tired, and cowed suddenly wakes up and decides it's done being polite. If you're hearing this right now, my name is Samuel Quinn, 60 years old, born and bruised on American soil. And I'm finally telling the story I spent half a lifetime running from. A story about family betrayal and the kind of revenge an old man never forgets. If you're watching this video, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you first heard about my revenge story, because I need to know. I need to know how far the truth has traveled and whether Julianne's friends have found it yet. Because once I tell you what she did to my brother and what I did to her, you'll understand why I'm not sure I'll live long enough to film another part. The rain came down like it had a personal grudge against me. I remember gripping the steering wheel of my old '98 Ford pickup, the kind of truck that rattles when you hit 40 mph and leaks a little water from the corner of the windshield when the storm's mean enough. That night, the Hudson River rode right beside me, like a long black vein pulsing under flashes of white lightning. The wipers screeched back and forth, barely clearing the flood of rain. If you looked at me from another car, you'd probably think I was some tired old man trying to get home before the storm knocked out the electricity. And yeah, I guess that's what I look like most days. But that night, I wasn't going home. I was driving straight into the one story I'd spent my entire adult life avoiding. "Fix the biggest mistake of my life," I muttered to myself, knuckles white around the wheel. I said it again, louder this time, like maybe God or whoever was listening could help me believe it. Let me tell you something. People don't mention about hitting 60 regret stops, being a ghost that haunts you, and starts being a roommate that sleeps in your damn bed. Lightning cracked. The road shimmered. My heart did that jumpy thing it does when I forget my blood pressure meds. And then, because life loves to kick you in the ribs when you're already down, I heard myself say it out loud. I have a twin brother. I hadn't said those words in decades. My voice sounded strange in the truck cab. Have. Hell, that's part of the problem. A gust of wind slammed into the side of the truck, shaking it, and for a second, I wondered if maybe this was a sign to turn back. But no, it was too late. The moment I heard Matthew's voice again, the moment that call came in, the timeline of my life changed direction, like a river, cutting a new path through land. But let's rewind a little, just a little, to 3 nights before that storm. I was sitting in my small Yonkers apartment, the 1-bedroom rental I've been in since the divorce. Nothing special. Carpet older than I am, a window that only opens if you threaten it, a hallway that smells like Mrs. Henderson's boiled cabbage every damn evening. But it's mine. Quiet. Predictable. I just microwaved one of those frozen dinners, shaped like prison food meatloaf, the size of a thumb, mashed potatoes that taste like warm glue. I sat in my recliner, the one with the busted lever, balancing the tray on my knees, while the TV hummed about some politician lying through his teeth. After dinner, I took my pills, blood pressure, cholesterol, something for the heartburn. Getting older means every meal comes with a chemistry set. I remember scrolling through my phone afterward, not really looking for anything. I don't get many calls. Most guys my age don't, unless somebody died or somebody needs help moving a couch. I checked the weather, sighed at the heating bill, watched a video of some dog riding a skateboard, and thought, well, Sam, this is your life. Nice and boring. I was reaching for the lamp to turn in for the night when my phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. At 10:47 p.m., Most folks don't call at that hour unless something's very wrong. I let it ring twice before picking up already a night. Yeah, this is Sam. What came through the speaker didn't sound real at first. A breath, a ragged, painful breath. Then a voice, raspy, trembling, edged with panic. Sam, you still there? My whole body froze. I hadn't heard that voice in 40 damn years, but there are some sounds the soul never forgets. Matthew, I whispered. The air left my chest like somebody punched me. I need you, he said, every word like it hurt. Don't let me die here. Matt, where are you? What's going on? Talk to me. Behind him came a crash like metal hitting tile. Something toppled. A chair. A tray, I couldn't tell. Then a woman's voice, sharp like broken glass. Matthew, put that phone down. More noise, a scuffle. And the line went dead. Silence swallowed the room. No TV, no humming fridge, just the sound of blood roaring in my ears. I lowered the phone slowly like it might explode. 40 damn years, I muttered. 40 years of nothing, and now he calls. A mix of anger, fear, grief, and something ugly I'm ashamed to admit rose in me. I'd spent my whole life pretending I didn't have a brother anymore. Pretending the wound was scarred shut. Pretending forgetting was easier. Turns out, pretending don't mean a damn thing. I sat down at my tiny kitchen table, the laminate peeling at the corners. The room felt too quiet, too small. The phone lay in front of me, screen still lit, reflecting the missed call, as if to mock me. I stared at it, like it might speak again. And I'll tell you the truth, because I'm too old to lie. Now part of me wanted to let it go. To say, not my problem anymore. But another part, the part I've buried under work and pain and years of being alone, knew the truth. If I hang this up and pretend it never happened, I said softly, the words scraping out of me, that man dies alone. And this time it'll be on me. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours, time moves different when guilt pulls up a chair beside you. But when I finally stood, something felt different. Heavy but alive. Like a man waking up after sleeping through half his life. I grabbed my old jacket from the back of the door, frayed cuffs, broken zipper pockets full of years. Tugged on my boots. Took one last look at the apartment, where nothing ever changed. Then I told you, yes, you listening's on the other side of this story. I'm going back. Back to a life I buried. Back to a mess I helped create. To explain why this matters, I gotta take you back. Way back. To when I still thought I could save everybody. And with that I opened the door, stepped into the storm, and let the night swallow me whole. You ever look back at your own childhood and feel like you're watching someone else's life? That's how it is for me when I think about 1970s upstate New York. Dusty roads, split-level houses. Everybody's dad either fixing a car or ruining one. And behind every closed door, somebody was yelling. Me and Matthew, we grew up in a little 2-bedroom rental outside Kingston. The kind of place where the wallpaper curls at the corners from humidity and old cigarette smoke. I can still smell the combination of cheap beer and pine sol whenever I think about that house. After school, I'd go stock shelves at the hardware store, then pick up groceries, then help Mom with bills, then clean up whatever mess Dad left behind. Matthew was Matthew. Charming as hell. Played guitar like he was born with strings under his skin. Girls loved him. Teachers let him slide because he had that smile, wide, bright, dangerous. He'd stay out late, sneak into bars, go to lakeside parties, and come home smelling like beer and perfume. He used to say, Sam, you're wasting your life being the family janitor. You're supposed to be living. I'd tell him, somebody's got to clean up, Matt. He'd laugh and strum that damn guitar of his, acting like life was a movie, and he had the lead role. But let me tell you the truth, under all that charm he could run from everything except the fear in our house. And that fear centered around one man. There's one night, burned into my memory so bright, it still hurts to look at. Dad came home angrier than usual. Navy buddies stood him up paycheck short, something about a supervisor disrespecting him. He slammed through the door like a hurricane made of whiskey. Mom tried to calm him with leftovers and mild words. Didn't matter. He grabbed a beer bottle off the counter, took one long drink, and started in on Matthew first. "Pretty boy," he slurred. "With your guitar and your little girlfriends. What good are you? What kind of man are you gonna be?" Matthew tried to laugh it off, said something stupid like, "Relax, Dad." But his voice shook. He didn't fool me. Then the bottle hit the wall. The crash echoed down the hall. Beer dripped down the faded wallpaper like blood in a horror film. Matthew froze, eyes wide mouth open, hands shaking. Dad raised his hand. And I moved before I thought. I stepped between them. Took the shove. Took the punch. Hell, I'd been taking them for years. It didn't make me brave. It made me tired. Dad shouted about how he never wanted kids, how he wasted his life, how we ruined him. The same script he'd spit out every couple months depending on the booze level. Matthew stayed frozen. Mom stood by the kitchen sink shaking. Me. I just stood there with a bloody lip staring straight at Dad, refusing to move until he stormed out and slammed the door. That was the night something broke for good in our house. Dad left a week later, packed a duffel bag, muttered something about fresh starts, and walked out. No hug, no apology, not even a note. Mom collapsed emotionally. She stopped getting out of bed some days, stopped eating full meals, stopped being anything but a shadow in her own home. I picked up more hours after school weekends, whenever they'd take me. College brochures went into the trash. Dreams went with them. And Matthew, he doubled down on escaping. Played at bars, worked odd gigs, dated every girl who needed a musician to look at her like she was a miracle. He kept talking about New York City, like it was heaven and salvation rolled into one. "Sam, I'm gonna get out," he told me once. "Music loves something big, you'll see." I nodded, but inside I was pissed. Why did I have to be the one holding up the roof while he chased sunsets? Why did he get to run while I stayed? But guilt lives in the bones of an oldest son, even if you're older by 7 minutes. And something in me believed Matthew needed protecting, even when he didn't want it. Especially when he didn't want it. As senior year wound down, our fights got worse. Matthew accused me of playing Dad, of treating him like a reckless kid, of controlling him. I accused him of abandoning us, of running from every responsibility, like it was fire. Words got sharp. Anger got loud. Distance grew like mold between us. People talk about twins like it's some magical bond. Like you always think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings. What they don't tell you is, twins can break apart like anybody else. And when they do, the damage cuts deeper. One afternoon, I stopped by the diner where Mom worked. I was bussing plates because she was in the back, crying again, and the place was short-staffed. The bell over the door jingled. I glanced up and saw her. A woman not much older than us, maybe mid-20s, walking in, like she owned the air around her. Long, dark hair, simple blouse, nothing fancy. But she had a presence, composed, sharp. The kind of woman who's been through hell and learned to walk out smiling. She slid into a booth, ordered coffee. Matthew walked in 10 minutes later, guitar slung over his shoulder like trouble. He spotted her. She smiled at him. And right then, right in that 5-second exchange, my stomach dropped. Because some people are storms disguised as calm seas. And when she looked at my brother, I knew it. That was the day everything changed. I knew it the second she smiled at him. Julianne Carter, walked into our lives like she'd been planning it. She wasn't flashy, not the type with loud perfume or sparkly jewelry. No, she was the kind who made a room feel smaller just by standing in it. 25 years old, long dark hair, clean blazer heels that clicked like a metronome, keeping time for everybody else. She had that calm, pulled-together look of someone who'd been the grown-up in every situation since she was 12. Matthew was smitten in 10 seconds. I watched them from behind the counter at the diner, carrying plates, because Mom was too tired to. Matthew's guitar case hung off his shoulder, and when Julianne smiled at him, he lit up like someone finally turned on the electricity in his soul. They talked. They laughed. She touched his arm once lightly, and he damn near melted. What stuck with me wasn't how she looked at him, but how she looked at the rest of the world. Like we were background noise. Like everything around her was an inconvenience. I didn't know it then, but that look would become the shadow over the next 40 years of our lives. Their first few weeks together felt normal, I guess. She'd pick him up in her little blue Ford Escort windows, clean inside, neat seat positioned exactly. No mess, no clutter. Hell, even the air freshener smelled like something expensive. I'd see them sometimes downtown. Matthew would talk big dreams. She'd nod like she already knew how to shape them into something respectable. She worked in some insurance office, nothing special, but she made it sound like a career. She talked a lot about stability, long-term planning, responsibility. All the things Matthew wasn't exactly known for. And maybe that's why at first I didn't hate her. When she laughed at his jokes, she'd correct him gently, like he was charming, but fixable. When he wore a wrinkled shirt, she'd smooth it out and say, "Let's try something that makes you look a little more serious." She bought him a planner. A damn planner. Matthew treated it like it was sacred scripture. Part of me thought, good. Maybe she's helping him grow up. But there's helping someone, and then there's shaping them. And it didn't take long for the shaping to start hurting. The first time she rolled her eyes was when I mentioned Mom. We were at the diner counter. Matthew said he couldn't help clean out the shed that weekend. I told him Mom needed both of us. Julianne sighed, sharp, dismissive. "Sam," she said, "you can't keep leaning on him, like he's responsible for her emotional health." I blinked. Emotional health. She just needs help with the damn shed. She smiled, that condescending smile people use when they want to tell you you're stupid without saying the word. "You've always been overbearing," she said, tapping Matthew's arm. "Haven't you noticed?" Matthew laughed awkwardly, but he didn't defend me. That's when something in my chest tightened. Another time we were all at Sunday dinner. Mom made pot roast, a rare treat. Julianne sat with perfect posture, napkin on her lap, thanking Mom for the meal, like she was meeting her boss. I talked about my job at the hardware store, how I got promoted to manager of the paint section. Small thing, but in our family, small victories mattered. Julianne looked at me, then at Matthew. "You're so lucky," she said, hand on his shoulder. "Matthew has real potential. He shouldn't settle." Sam. Settle. Word burned. I kept eating, but something bitter sat under my tongue. Little by little she pulled Matthew away, like she was unwinding a thread tying us together. He missed helping Mom with the yard. He missed my birthday dinner. He missed the anniversary of Dad leaving, a day Mom always struggled through. Every excuse began with "Julianne planned something. Julianne thinks it's important." Julianne said he wasn't living his life anymore. He was living hers. When I tried to talk to him, things only got worse. I cornered him one night behind the house, where we used to sit on overturned milk crates and talk about everything. "You need to slow down," I said. "She's trying to cut you off from us." Matthew's face changed in an instant. First hurt, then anger, then something colder. "You don't get to say that," he snapped. "You're just jealous." Jealous of what? Of me finally having a life, of someone loving me for who I am. That's not love, Matt. You think you know everything because you work 2 jobs and play dad to everyone. She's controlling you. Can't you see that? No, he said, stepping back. All I see is you keeping me here, holding me down. You're not my father, Sam. I swallowed hard. He wasn't wrong. At least, not in the way he thought. I'm your brother, I said quietly. I'm trying to protect you. He shook his head. Let me breathe. Over the next few months, I watched the transformation. She arranged his schedule, work, rehearsals, sleep. She told him which friends were good influences and which weren't. She started managing his money because he was too careless. She answered questions for him in conversations. She encouraged him not to visit home too often because it triggered his anxiety. And Matthew, he let her. Not because he was weak, but because he wanted someone to believe he was worth reshaping. The worst part. There were no bruises, no screaming fights, nothing I could point to and say, there. That's abuse. It was all polite, polished, proper. Just like our father, but smoother, smarter, quieter. Pain you can't name is the hardest to fight. One evening, right as the sun was setting, Matthew showed up at the house with a duffel bag. Julianne waited in her car, engine running. I'm moving in with her, he said. Voice shaky but determined. I need some space from the family drama. Matt, you're not my dad, Sam. You're my brother. Let me breathe. He wouldn't look at me. Mom stood behind me, hands shaking on the doorway frame. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Words felt pointless at that moment. He hugged Mom. He didn't hug me. Then he walked down the steps, tossed the duffel into the back seat, and got in beside her. She didn't look at us. Of course she didn't. The car backed out, turned left, disappeared down the street. Just like that, my kid brother was gone. I stood on the porch until the sound of the engine faded, until Mom went inside, until the ski turned the color of bruises. And I said to the empty yard, and now to you, that was the last time I saw him as my kid brother. The next time, I barely recognized the man she turned him into. People think life breaks in big dramatic ways, but most of the time it just thins out, like a rope stretched too tight, until the fibers give one by one quietly, without anyone noticing. That's what my 20s and 30s looked like. After Matthew drove away with Julianne, I threw myself into work. Full-time construction, then rail engineering. Long days, cold mornings, a lot of coffee and ibuprofen. I learned to read blueprints, to weld, to fix anything with a motor. I traveled from job to job. Albany, Buffalo, sometimes Pennsylvania, chasing paychecks and pretending it was ambition, not avoidance. By 28, my back hurt more mornings than it didn't. By 30, I had knees that cracked like popcorn every time I climbed scaffolding. The guys on the crew used to joke I was old inside, and they weren't wrong. Somewhere in there, I met Linda. She worked at a grocery store near one of my build sites. Quiet woman, warm eyes, the kind who always asked how your day was, and genuinely meant it. We married when I was 32. Small ceremony. A backyard barbecue afterward. Nothing fancy, but it felt steady, comfortable. Linda wanted kids, I told her someday. But the truth was, I was terrified. My whole life I'd seen only 2 kinds of fathers, the kind who ran and the kind who hurt people. I didn't know how to be anything else. So I worked more hours, took more overtime, moved from site to site. For the money, I said. For the future. But really, I was hiding from building one. I don't think I said Matthew's name more than a handful of times during that decade. Linda would ask gently, "Have you heard from your brother lately?" And I'd shrug. "Nah, he's busy." It's been a while. I never told her how I'd sit with my cell phone some nights, back when they were still flip phones, scrolling through old contacts and hovering over the number I had for him. Every time I dialed, she answered. Julianne. Always Julianne. Sam, she'd say in that calm, perfectly pleasant voice. Matthew's resting. He's been stressed lately. Best to let him unwind. Or, he's working late. I'll tell him you called. Or the worst one. He's not feeling well. I'll have him call you tomorrow. He never did. Letters went unanswered. Birthdays forgotten. No photos. No updates. Nothing. It was like my own brother had become a missing person. No one bothered to read. Who 1 year must have been 99. Linda convinced me to try one last time. Let's drive to him, she said. Surprise him. Maybe he needs to see your face. So we wrapped a couple gifts, got in the car, and drove 2 hours through slushy snow to the address I had scribbled in an old notebook. When we pulled up, the house was empty. Sold according to a faded sign in the yard. A neighbor stepped out to shovel his driveway. Said the young couple moved months ago. Didn't leave a forwarding address. I thanked him, got back in the car, and drove home in silence. Linda reached over, put her hand on mine. I didn't pull away, but I also didn't squeeze back. Something closed inside me that night. Something I didn't know how to reopen. Mom's health went downhill slowly at first. Blood pressure problems, heart issues, depression, worse than ever. She'd call me sometimes from the edge of tears, saying she felt lonely, forgotten. I'd sit with her after work, make soup, fix whatever needed fixing around the house. But Matthew, he never showed. Not when she had surgery. Not when she was hospitalized. Not even when I left a message with Julianne, my voice shaking, saying Mom's dying. He never called back. Mom passed on a cold January morning. Snow piled on the porch, hospital lights too bright. I sat alone by her bed when the machines went quiet. The funeral was small. Neighbors, a few church folks, me, and the space beside me where Matthew belonged. I stood by her grave after everyone else left. Hands shoved into my coat pockets, breath fogging the air. I tried to find him, I told her. But maybe he doesn't want to be found. I promised her soft, weak words. I barely believed that if Matthew ever needed me, I'd show up. Thing is, I didn't think he ever would. Loneliness is contagious. After Mom died, I changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. I started coming home later, stopped joking around, stopped talking about my day. Linda would ask what's wrong, and I'd shrug. Nothing. Every damn time, nothing. After years of nothing, she finally packed a single suitcase. She didn't yell, didn't accuse. She just looked tired. She stood in the doorway and said, I feel like I've been married to a closed door, Sam. And I'm too old to keep knocking. The divorce was civil, sad, quiet, just like our marriage had become. I didn't fight it, didn't try to stop her. Truth was, I didn't know how anymore. My 50s were a long gray hallway, small rental near the Hudson, 2 rooms, ceiling stains from the apartment upstairs, neighbors I barely knew, microwave dinners again, every joint aching like rusted hinges. Refees. I became the old guy on job sites, the one younger men asked for advice, but no one invited for drinks. Co-workers retired, passed away, moved south for warmer weather. Nights were quiet, too quiet. I'd sit in my recliner, crack my knuckles, stare at the wall, and sometimes catch myself saying out loud, You've really done it, Sam. You shrank your life to the size of a shoebox. After enough years, regret doesn't even hurt. It just numbs you. And numb is worse. That's when I started telling people I was an only child. It was easier, cleaner, less painful than saying I have a twin brother who disappeared into someone else's life. The night before the call, the stormy night I told you about, I sat alone in that cramped apartment, rain tapping the window like impatient fingers. I heated up leftover chili, flipped through channels, stared at the same four walls I'd been staring at for 15 years. Felt old, felt small. And I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe this is all aging, is shrinking down until there's nothing left but routine and regret. I leaned back, closed my eyes. That's when the phone vibrated on the table. Unknown number. Regional code from somewhere upstate. Somewhere unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. Almost let it ring out like I'd done 1,000 times with spam calls and bad memories. But something made me pick it up. "Hello," I said. And then after 40 years of silence, a voice I knew better than my own came through the line. "Sam, it's me. Matthew." The line went dead so fast it felt like someone had cut a wire straight through my chest. I stared at the phone thumb hovering over callback. Hit dial. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. I must have called 20 times. Maybe 30. The storm was beating the windows like it wanted in, thunder rolling over Yonkers in long, low rumbles. Every time voicemail picked up, my stomach twisted harder. By the time the rain eased, the sun wasn't far from rising, and I was still sitting at that damn table, gripping the phone like it might suddenly apologize and ring again. But it didn't. I barely slept. My back hurt worse than usual. My eyes felt like sandpaper, and my heart thumped like a loose engine belt. But I got up anyway, made coffee strong enough to dissolve a spoon, and sat down with the phone. I'm not tech savvy. Never have been. I still type with 2 fingers. But when someone you love whispers, "Don't let me die here," suddenly, you learn fast. I checked the call log. Unknown number. Area code from somewhere north of the city. I Googled the area code, then the prefix, narrowed it down to a cluster of towns along the Hudson, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, Briarcliff, Ossining. Places I'd driven past 100 times on the job, never giving them a second thought. Next, I called my cell carrier. "Sir, we can't share confidential information. I don't need the person's name," I said, voice cracking in a way that startled even me. "Just tell me if it's a business line." A long pause. A sigh. "Sir, it's connected to a medical facility." My chest tightened. "What kind of facility?" "I'm sorry, I can't disclose that." But I already knew. My brother's voice. The background sounds. The woman shouting. Something wasn't right. I drove to the public library. God bless librarians. They always know things the rest of us don't. I searched Hudson Valley, memory care, long-term facility, Tarrytown Rehabilitation Center, and combinations of those words until my head spun. Finally, I saw it. Hudson Memory Care and Wellness Center. Bright website. Stock photos of smiling seniors. Couples holding hands, people doing puzzles, and yoga in soft sunlight. Every slogan was a warm blanket. Dignity in every moment. Peace of mind for every family. Modern care with compassion. But then I saw the ownership line. Director/owner, Julianne Carter Quinn. My blood went cold so fast I felt dizzy. No way. No damn way. After 40 years, she still had him. I stepped outside the library, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. Hudson Memory Care. How can I help you? Yes, hi. I'm an old friend of Matthew Quinn. Wanted to check in on him. Sir, we can't release any patient information over the phone. HIPAA law. I understand. Could you at least tell me if, sir, I'm sorry. Her tone wasn't rude, just rehearsed. I thanked her, hung up, and made a decision without thinking twice. I was going there. Today. Right now, the place looked like a luxury hotel for people who forgot they were rich. Big white building. Fresh paint. Green lawns trimmed with military precision. A fountain out front, shaped like a damn lotus flower. Flags waving. BMWs, Lexuses, and shiny black SUVs parked in the visitor lot. I pulled in with my rusted Ford, the muffler rattling like loose teeth. Inside, everything smelled like lavender and disinfectant. Not the cheap kind, the kind rich people buy in glass bottles. The receptionist stood behind a glossy white counter, smiling politely. A badge on her shirt said, "Maria. Can I help you? I'm looking for my brother, Matthew Quinn." Her smile froze. She flicked a glance toward an office door behind her. Before I could ask what that meant, the door opened, and she walked out. Julianne Carter Quinn, 60-something now. Hair silvered but styled sharp. Cream-colored blouse, tailored slacks. Pearls. A cane in one hand, not frailty but authority. Like a queen holding a scepter. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a second time folded in half. Every instinct in me screamed one thing. She knows exactly who I am. "Samuel," she said, voice smooth as polished stone. "It's been years." "Where's my brother?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Matthew is fragile, easily upset. Visits confuse him." "Funny," I said. "He sounded pretty damn aware when he called me last night." A flicker. Tiny, but real. Her mask slipped a millimeter before snapping back in place. "You're mistaken," she said. "Matthew hasn't used a phone in months. He struggles with reality. He imagines things. People." She looked straight into my eyes. "Especially people who left him." The words hit like a slap, because they weren't entirely wrong. "He asked for me," I said softly. "I'm here." She stepped closer, cane tapping gently on the tile. "You left him to drown in your family's chaos." I picked him up. I spent decades caring for him, guiding him, protecting him. And now, after all this time, you want to stroll in like some hero. Her tone wasn't angry. It was worse. It was triumphant. She leaned in just slightly. "I am his legal guardian. Durable power of attorney. I have every document needed to act on his behalf. His well-being is my responsibility, not yours." The receptionist stared at her hands. Staff passing by avoided her eyes. Everyone knew who held the real power here. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "Can I see him?" I asked. "No," she answered instantly. Then with a polite smile, "Leave your number. If he becomes stable enough for a visit, perhaps I'll call." Every word was a door slam. But I wrote down my number anyway. Not for her. For Matthew. She took the paper like it was a meaningless receipt. "Goodbye, Samuel." Outside, the air hit me hard. Cold, sharp, real. I walked to my truck, sat in the driver's seat, but didn't start the engine. My hands shook. Not from fear. From rage. From the realization that she'd built an entire world where I didn't exist, and she'd done it carefully, legally, quietly. But she'd made one mistake. Matthew remembered me long enough to call. And that meant her story had a crack. A small one. But even small cracks can break dams. I stared into the rearview mirror to steady myself. That's when I saw her. An older nurse standing by the employee entrance. Gray hair tucked behind her ears. Scrubs. Tired posture. She watched me not with suspicion. With something else. Guilt, fear. Or maybe a plea. For a long second, our eyes locked. Then she looked away quickly and slipped back inside. Just a flicker. Just a moment. But it was enough. Because, in places like this, the truth always lives in the eyes of the people too afraid to speak. And I'd just found the first person who knew it. I waited 3 days before going back. 3 days pacing my apartment. 3 days replaying Matthew's voice in my head. Cracked, terrified pleading. 3 days trying to decide whether an old man like me could actually go up against someone like Julianne. or a whole damn system built to hide people like him. On the fourth morning, I shaved, put on my one decent button-down, the blue one Linda bought me before our divorce. I bought a small bouquet on the way, daisies cheap but honest, and drove north along the Hudson under a pale sky. I practiced looking calm, harmless, like just another old guy visiting a parent or a friend. Inside, the lobby looked the same as before, clean, bright, soft music playing. But something in the air felt heavier now that I knew the truth was hiding behind it. I didn't check in at the desk. I walked straight outside around the side of the building toward the employee smoking area. I'd noticed it last time. Every long-term care facility has one. Staff can only bottle up so much before they need a cigarette break. Sure enough, she was there. The nurse from before. Gray scrubs, hair pulled back. A paper cup of coffee instead of a cigarette this time. She looked tired in a way you don't fix with sleep. She saw me. Didn't flinch. Didn't ask why I was back. Just said, "You're Sam." I nodded. "And you're the only person here who didn't look at me like I was a mistake." She let out a small, humorless breath. "Name's Angela." A beat of silence. Then I said quietly, "Is my brother here?" Her eyes softened, then tightened, like she regretted the answer even before saying it. "Yes." My knees almost buckled. "He talks about you sometimes," she added. "When he's clear. Says you used to fish with him by the river." Matthew always did mix up which river. "We grew up near the Mohawk, but after he moved away, he romanticized the Hudson, like it was some gateway to adulthood. Sam by the river." God. I swallowed. "Why'd you look at me like that the other day?" She hesitated, looked back toward the building. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said. "But things aren't right in there. Not with your brother." I said nothing. Just let her talk. "His chart says advanced dementia. He's on sedatives, heavy ones. Stuff we don't normally use unless a patient is violent. But I've never seen him violent. Not once. See? I've seen him confused, scared, sluggish, but not dangerous." I clenched my jaw. "Sedatives ordered by who?" I asked, though I already knew. She nodded. "Julianne's doctor, her personal pick. She signs off on everything." A cold wind cut through my shirt. I barely felt it. "She keeps him isolated," Angela said. "Tells staff he's paranoid, that visitors destabilize him. She doesn't allow phone access. She rarely leaves his side when she's here." I rubbed my hands down my face. "Why hasn't anyone reported this?" She lowered her voice. "You don't understand this place. It looks nice because families with money pay to keep their loved ones here. Mix that with legal documents and a director with connections." She shook her head. "Most staff don't want to get involved. They need the job." I met her eyes. "But you do." She swallowed hard. I don't know why she whispered, voice cracking. Maybe because I see my own brother in him. Maybe because I'm tired. Or because you're the first person who's shown up for him in years. Then she straightened, decision forming. "If you want to see him," she said, "I can get you in. For a few minutes. But not as family." "How?" "As a volunteer from the church down the street. They come sometimes to play music for residents. No one questions it." I let out a breath I'd been holding since 1983. She motioned for me to follow. "Stay close. Head down. Walk like you belong." I did. The hallways glowed with soft lighting. Residents sat in groups, some playing cards, some doing puzzles, some staring blankly at televisions mounted on walls. Everything sparkled, too clean, too quiet. When a place looks perfect, I've learned it's usually hiding something rotten underneath. I passed rooms where elderly folks slumped in chairs, eyes glassy. Too many of them looked sedated. Too many had that hollow, faraway stare. Angela whispered, "We call it the silent wing. Families think their loved ones are peaceful. They are drugged. Then she stopped. My heart lurched. This is him, she said. I stepped inside and froze. The man in the bed looked nothing like the Matthew I remembered. He was thin, too thin. Cheekbones sharp, hair sparse, hands trembling softly on the blanket. His skin had that pale, over-medicated tint I'd seen in hospitals more times than I wanted. But when he turned his head, those eyes, God, those were Matthew's eyes. Clouded, tired, but still there. He squinted at me. A long moment passed. Then something flickered. Sam, he whispered. My throat closed. I nodded. He lifted a trembling hand. I went to him and wrapped both hands around his. He sobbed. Quiet, broken sobs that sounded like they'd been trapped for decades. I'm sorry, he choked out. I'm so damn sorry I left. I thought she loved me. I thought she knew better. I was a coward. I didn't know how to come back. I shook my head. No, don't you do that. I'm the one who stopped looking. He squeezed my hand with what little strength he had. She told me you forgot me, he whispered. Said you didn't want me around. Said I was too much. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward. You were never too much, I said. You were my brother. Matthew cried harder. Through broken sentences, he told me everything, how Julianne isolated him, how she convinced doctors he was unstable whenever he disagreed, how she threatened to have him declared incompetent, how she slowly took control of his accounts, house retirement, how every attempt to leave ended with a med adjustment that left him foggy for days, how he began doubting his own memories, how he thought he deserved it. She wants to move me, he whispered, to the secure ward. No windows that open, no phone access. Once I'm there, I'm gone for good. That was the first time in years I felt real burning anger, a fire I thought my age had put out. You called me, I said. How Angela left the chart card in the hall. There was a phone. I remembered your number. Not all of it, but enough to guess. He looked up with a frail smile. And you answered. Angela stuck her head in the door of his tents. You have to go. She's on the floor. I squeezed Matthew's hand one last time. I'm not leaving you, I said. Not again. He nodded, tears slipping onto the pillow. I knew you'd come, he whispered. As Angela hurried me toward the exit, I glanced down the hallway. Julianne stood at the far end, talking to a doctor. She turned slowly, and her eyes swept the hall until they landed on me. No shock, no panic. Just a long, cold stare that said, I know. And I'm not done with him. Or you. I walked out anyway. Voiceover in my head. And now to you, if I walked away now, I could pretend I tried. But that'd be abandoning him all over again. So I did the scariest thing a tired old man can do. I picked a fight with the system. And with a woman who'd been perfecting her game for 40 years. I used to think construction paperwork was hell, permits, safety checklists, OSHA nonsense. Turns out that was child's play compared to trying to pull your twin brother out of a legal coffin. The morning after seeing Matthew, I sat at my kitchen table with my old clunky laptop battery held together with duct tape and typed the words elder abuse signs, power of attorney, abuse over-medicated in a nursing home, how to save a family member from guardianship. Every link felt like falling into a deeper hole. I called an ape's halmisi. The woman who picked up had that calm, practiced voice you hear from people who've been in the job too long to get shocked anymore. She listened while I described the sedatives, the restrictions, Julianne's power, the way Matthew looked at me like a man holding on to the last rung of a ladder. She said softly, Mr. Quinn, what you're describing could be abuse. But we need documentation, patterns, something a judge can't ignore. documentation, patterns, proof. My life had never felt smaller than in that moment. But I wrote her number down. A caseworker named Devin came to my apartment the next morning. Young guy, friendly eyes, suit jacket too big. Looked like he could have been my son's age if I'd had kids. He sat at my kitchen table, took notes, asked questions. Over medication, did you see the pills? No. Isolation, was this confirmed by staff? One nurse. Any financial statements showing misuse? I don't have excesses. He kept writing. When I finished, my hands were shaking. Didn't even know until I saw him glance at them. He said, "You're doing the right thing." But without hard evidence, apps can't act directly. I nodded, pretended I understood. Inside, all I heard was not enough. I don't trust lawyers. Never have. But Matthew needed someone who knew how to fight with paperwork instead of fists. So I walked into the Yonkers Senior Legal Aid office and asked if anyone handled elder abuse cases. That's how I met Megan Ross. Late 30s. Sharp bob haircut. No-nonsense blazer. A pen she clicked when she was thinking hard. She didn't waste time on sympathy. She went straight to questions. Your brother's condition. Your relationship history. What legal documents does she hold? What did staff tell you? Do you have anyone willing to testify? When I finished, she leaned back. Okay, she said. From what you've told me, Julianne likely has power of attorney, possibly guardianship. If so, that means she has legal authority to make decisions for him. I clenched my jaw. Even if she's destroying him, Megan tapped the pen slowly. That's what we need to prove. She laid it out like battle plans to challenge guardianship. We needed evidence she was harming him medically, financially, emotionally. To get an emergency hearing, we had to show immediate risk. To win, we'd have to convince a judge that I, not Julianne, was acting in Matthew's best interest. She paused. Mr. Quinn, you should know. Courts don't always like when a sibling steps in at the last minute, especially one with no degree, no medical background, no financial stake. I'm 60, I said. I've built bridges, tracks, repaired half the damn Hudson line. That count for anything. She gave me a small, tired smile. In my book. Yes. In court. Less than you'd hope. The evidence hunt. Angela came through first. She sent Megan anonymized medication schedules numbers that made no sense for someone Matthew's age. Records of denied visitors. Notes of Julianne, insisting on new prescriptions after any sign of agitation. Everything she sent was risky for her, but she sent it anyway. I dug up old documents. From Mom's house, photos of Matthew, healthy, smiling, coherent. Letters he wrote me when we were kids, proof he'd once been fully capable. Megan told me, we need to show the court who he used to be and who he still is, underneath all the sedation. She also made me get a medical exam. You'll be a candidate for temporary guardianship if we win. The court needs to know you are mentally fit and physically reliable. I passed mostly blood pressure, high back, inflamed but competent. Small victories. The facility administration found out someone was leaking documents. I don't know how. But suddenly everything shifted. Matthew's phone access went from restricted to non-existent. Staff were told, no contact with Samuel Quinn. He is not family of record. And then the letter arrived in my mailbox. Cease and desist. Harassment of a protected patient. Cold formal, dripping with legal poison. Signed by Julianne's attorney. I sat in my truck, reading it, hands trembling with rage and fear. Was I harassing him? Was I making things worse? I almost quit. Almost walked away. Then I remembered Matthew's voice. Don't let me die here. And quitting wasn't an option anymore. Before the emergency hearing, the court required a mediation meeting. Neutral space, neutral table, neutral eyes, On one side me, Megan, a folder of thin evidence and thick hope. On the other, Julianne's attorney, smooth suit, cold smile, and Julianne herself wearing a pearl brooch, like she was attending a fundraiser, not defending decades of abuse. The attorney opened with, "This is a sad situation. But Fifi, Quinn is clearly overwhelmed by guilt and grief. But my client has cared for Matthew all these years financially, emotionally, medically. Disrupting his routine now would cause irreparable harm." Megan countered with medication charts, visitor denials, inconsistencies. The attorney brushed it off as standard protocol. Then they asked me to speak. I didn't know the law, didn't know the system, didn't have fancy words. So I told the truth. "I saw my brother," I said. "He looked like a man somebody put in a cage. And he cried because he thought he'd disappear and nobody would notice. I'm not trying to undo my past. I'm trying to give him a future." Silence swept the room. Julianne stared at me with dead eyes. Finally, Megan closed her folder. "We're requesting an emergency guardianship hearing." The attorney smirked. "Good luck." 2 days later, Megan called. "We got the hearing. Friday morning. Judge Reynolds. Whatever happens, it's going on the record." I hung up, sat at my kitchen table, stared at the wall. That's when my landline rang. Nobody uses that number. Not anymore. I picked up. Breathing. Shaky, shallow breathing. Then Matthew's voice, thin, terrified. "Sam. She's moving me. Sis says there's a locked unit. No windows. No phones. A noise. A door slamming. A woman's voice, the sharp, furious." The line crackled. Then silence. I stood there, holding the phone like it was the last tether to my brother's wife. And maybe it was. Morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror in my cramped bathroom, wrestling with a tie I hadn't worn since Linda left. The thing hung crooked no matter how many times I straightened it. I finally gave up, muttering, "Close enough," and splashed cold water on my face. I didn't look powerful, didn't look polished, didn't look like the kind of man who wins courtroom battles. I looked like a 60-year-old laborer, with stiff joints, gray stubble, and hands that had seen more steel and dirt than pens and legal forms. But I felt steady. "Whatever happens," I whispered to my reflection, "he's not alone in there anymore." And that had to count for something. County Court, Terrytown. Not grand, just a modest wood-paneled room with faded flags and a ceiling fan clicking like it had arthritis. Judge Reynolds presided, late 50s, sharp-eyed face that said she'd seen too many families fail each other. The kind of judge who didn't care for theatrics. Julianne sat at the opposite table, looking like a senator's wife, pearls, perfect posture, not a hair out of place. Her attorney whispered to her, like he was coaching a witness in a political scandal. Megan leaned toward me. "Let me do the talking, unless the judge addresses you directly." I nodded, palms sweating. Judge Reynolds called the hearing to order. Julianne's attorney went first, laying out medical records, thick as phone books, documented dementia, cognitive decline, episodes of aggression. He painted Matthew as unstable, confused, incapable of making any decisions. Then they brought in Julianne's personal doctor. Man in his 70s, expensive suit, barely looked at Matthew's chart before declaring Mr. Quinn is incapable of independent functioning. Megan stood up. "Your Honor, we'd like to question the witness." The judge nodded. Megan paced slowly, controlled. "Doctor, how long is your average visit with Mr. Quinn?" 10 to 15 minutes. "When was the last time you saw him fully awake, not sedated?" A pause. He cleared his throat. I follow the director's recommendations." "So you rely on Julianne Carter Quinn's reports?" "Partially, yes." Megan turned to the judge. "No further questions." Julianne's doctor stepped down, face tight. APS caseworker Devin took the stand next. He followed protocol, kept things clinical. "We have concerns," he said, "but APS cannot confirm wrongdoing without further evidence." Judge Reynolds wrote notes, face unreadable. Then came Angela. She walked to the stand like she was walking into a fire, hands shaking slightly. But her voice, though soft, carried. "I'm a nurse at Hudson Memory Care. I've worked in elder care for 30 years. Megan asked, "Have you observed anything concerning about Mr. Matthew Quinn's treatment?" Angela glanced at me, then the judge. "Yes. He is medicated beyond medical necessity. He's isolated from other residents. And I've seen him lucid, aware, articulate, despite his chart stating advanced dementia." Julianne's attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, this nurse is violating confidentiality." The judge raised a hand. "She's testifying under whistleblower protection. Sit down." Angela continued. "Mr. Quinn mentioned his brother Sam often. When he was clearer, he asked for him." That hit the room like a hammer. I swallowed hard, fighting the sting behind my eyes. Judge Reynolds gestured. "Mr. Quinn, please take the stand." My knees cracked embarrassingly loud as I stood. I heard a couple snickers from the gallery. I ignored them. I sat, raised my hand, swore the oath. My voice sounded rough, but steady. I told the truth. All of it. From our childhood, our father's temper, our mother's sadness, to Julianne pulling Matthew away, to 40 years of silence. I spoke about the call in the rain, the sound of Matthew's voice, the fear, the apology. He told me I said he didn't want to disappear in there. He said he didn't want to forget who he was. I paused. The room was silent. "I'm not here to erase Julianne," I said. "I know she helped him at times. I'm not denying that. But somewhere along the way, support turned into control. And control turned into something that took my brother's life away from him." Megan stepped forward, driving home the legal points: over-medication, isolation, financial access, CCC, misuse of power of attorney. Then she said the sentence that seemed to sway the judge. "Your Honor, this is not a battle of who was absent or present. This is about who is acting in Matthew Quinn's best interest right now." Julianne stared at me, eyes blazing, but face expressionless. Judge Reynolds shuffled papers, exhaled through her nose, then spoke in a tone that sliced through the air. "Effective immediately, this court orders an independent physician to review Mr. Quinn's medications. Power of attorney, held by Mrs. Carter Quinn, is temporarily suspended pending investigation. Samuel Quinn is granted temporary co-guardianship with full visitation rights." Megan touched my shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. Julianne's jaw tightened. Her attorney stood objecting, demanding reconsideration. The judge shut it down with a single raised hand. "Mrs. Carter Quinn," Judge Reynolds said, "until the court clarifies your status, you are not to interfere with Mr. Quinn's communication or medical care." Julianne nodded stiffly, but her eyes, they promised war. 3 days later, armed with court papers and a knot of dread, I walked into Hudson Memory Care. The staff no longer avoided eye contact. They weren't friendly, but at least they weren't blocking my path. But at the end of the hallway, she waited. Julianne, cane in hand, body rigid, eyes cold enough to freeze boiling water. "You don't belong here," she said quietly. "Judge says I do. You destroyed everything I built." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. "Do you think he'd have survived without me?" "You didn't help him survive," I said. "You kept him small, so you could feel big." Her face twisted, not rage, not madness. Something sadder, something broken. "You left," she whispered. "I stayed." I nodded. "I did leave. And I'll hate myself for that, until I die. But keeping someone in a velvet cage isn't love, Julianne. A soft sound behind me. Matthew. He stood in the doorway of his room, thin shaking, but upright. A small duffel bag in one hand, his other gripping the wall for balance. "Julianne," he said, voice trembling but clear. "You helped me once. I know you did. But this isn't help anymore." She stared at him, like he'd stabbed her. "I don't belong to you," Matthew said. "And I don't belong to Sam either. I just want my life back." Tears welled in Julianne's eyes, real tears. But she didn't move. She didn't fight. She just let the keys slip from her fingers. They hit the floor with a metallic ping. Nurse Angela, the APS worker, 2 other staff, all watched silently. Legally, she had no power left to stop us. Matthew stepped toward me. I held out my arm. He took it. Together, we walked down the hallway, slow, shaky steps, like 2 old men, learning to stand after decades on their knees. At the automatic doors, Matthew stopped, chest tight, breath shallow. Anxiety washing over him like a cold wave. "Sam," he whispered, fingers digging into my arm. "What if I can't do it out there?" I looked at him, this man who was once my shadow, my twin, my mirror, and I said, "Then we'll fail together. But for once, it'll be on our own terms." The doors slid open. Bright daylight flooded in, and we stepped into it. If you'd told me a year ago that my brother and I would end up in a tiny rental cottage overlooking the Hudson, I'd have laughed, or winced, or both. But here we are, 3 months since the hearing, 3 months since I walked Matthew out of that place, 3 months of learning slowly, stubbornly how to be brothers again after decades of silence. The cottage is nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms the size of closets, a kitchen with cabinets that groan when you open them, and a living room that smells faintly like the last tenant, smoked cigars. But the porch looks straight out toward the river. Sun hits the water every morning like God's own flashlight. And for 2 old men trying to relearn the world, that's more than enough. Mornings are our best time. I brew the coffee too strong. Matthew says it tastes like engine oil. I tell him that's why it wakes him up. He makes his version a couple times a week, weak as dishwater, and insists it's easier on the nerves. We meet somewhere in the middle. Brothers always do. We sit on the porch with our mismatched mugs while the river fog rolls off the water. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. Silence feels less dangerous now, more like home. By 10 a.m., we're at physical therapy. Matthew's walking steadier these days, though he uses a cane and tires easily. The meds now controlled by an independent doctor are half what they used to be. He's sharper, clearer, still shaky sometimes, still haunted, but present. At the clinic, the therapist gives us exercises, leg lifts, balance drills, stretching. I do them too. My back cracks like fireworks, but hell, pain means I'm still breathing. We argue over whose joints sound worse. He usually wins. Afternoons are quieter. Sometimes he naps. Sometimes he sits at the table and stares out the window, chewing on memories, the way men our age chew on old regrets. And me, I clean, I fix, I cook, I hover more than I should. We're both trying to learn the difference between caring and controlling. It's harder than I expected. Not every day is peaceful. Some nights, Matthew shakes himself awake, chest heaving, eyes darting. "It's just a nightmare," I tell him. But he whispers, "It wasn't a nightmare. It was my life." He carries a mountain of shame, years spent believing Julianne's voice over his own years of thinking dependency was love, years of thinking he deserved whatever he got. And me, I've got my own pile. Guilt that I left him. Anger at myself for the years wasted. Fear that if I blink, he'll slip back into that darkness. We're 2 old men with too many years we can't rewrite. One night, sitting at the kitchen table, Matthew said softly, "Do you ever wish we'd found each other earlier? I didn't have to think. Every damn day." He nodded, eyes wet. "But we found each other now." And I nodded back, because sometimes truth doesn't need more words. Every Thursday afternoon, we drive to a community center. Tiny building, old carpet-free coffee that tastes like burnt toast. But the people inside, they are the bravest I've ever met. Men and women in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Some had money stolen by their own kids. Some were manipulated by caregivers. Some were isolated for years the way Matthew was. They talk in soft voices that crack around the edges. They share stories they've never told out loud. And I watch Matthew listen, shoulders, hunched hands, clasped, nodding slowly. Then one day he spoke. "I thought I was weak," he said. "But I wasn't. I was alone, and that's different." The room went still. Some of the older men wiped their eyes. And I realized something: healing doesn't just happen in hospitals or courtrooms. Sometimes it happens in folding chairs under fluorescent lights. And me, I found myself talking too, telling them that I spent half my life shrinking away from responsibility, shrinking away from hurt. That it took being 60 and nearly losing my twin again to grow a spine. One of the ladies, Gwen, 75, sharp as a tack, patted my arm and said, "It's never too late to stop disappearing." I believed her. Later that month, I found an old guitar at a pawn shop. $50. A little warped, missing a string, but good enough. Matthew stared at it like it was a ghost. I placed it gently in his lap. "Thought you might want to try," I said. His fingers shook as he touched the fretboard. They're stiffer now, slower, but the muscle memory is still in there somewhere. He strummed a few unsteady chords, tinny, uneven. Didn't matter. I sat across from him, eyes swelling in a way I'll deny if you ever ask. He wasn't playing well, but he was playing by choice. Not because someone told him to, not because he was trying to impress or earn approval, but because he wanted to. That's freedom in the small moments. One night, the TV was off, room dim, river wine tapping the window. I looked up and caught our reflection in the dark screen. Two old men, gray hair, lined faces. One hunched over a guitar, one leaning back with a heating pad on his lower spine. Scarred, tired, but alive. And I thought about all the times I'd told people I was an only child. How easy it was to erase him, so I didn't have to admit I'd failed him. I'll never do that again. "Matt," I said quietly, "I won't ever pretend you're gone. Not again." He looked over at me, eyes soft, and nodded. "Now, if you're still listening to this story, if you're watching this video or reading these words, I want to talk to you directly. Yeah, you. The older guy eating dinner alone. The woman sitting in her quiet kitchen. The grandparent who doesn't want to be a burden. The senior convinced life has already passed them by. I want you to hear something. It's okay to admit you're scared. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say enough. Love isn't someone owning your time, your money, your choices. Love isn't fear. Love isn't silence. Love isn't control dressed up as concern. And standing up for yourself at 60, 70, 80, it doesn't erase the years you lost, but it saves the years you have left. That's what matters. Every evening, Matthew and I walk slowly down to a worn wooden bench by the Hudson, the same river he used to imagine when we were kids. We sit side by side watching boats, listening to wind cut through cattails. We don't talk much. We don't need to. Sometimes he rests his head back and says, "Feels good to breathe without asking permission." And I say, yeah, it does. We spent 40 years apart learning how to disappear. These days we're learning something new, how to stay. And if two old fools like us can start over, hell, so can you. You know, folks ask me all the time if I regret it. The years lost, the silence, the running away. And the truth is, yeah, I do. I regret the hell out of it. 40 years is a long time to let fear drive the wheel. But here's the part I hold on to. It's never too late to turn around. Never too late to show up for someone you love. And never too late to show up for yourself. If my story means anything, let it be this. You're not done. Not at 60, not at 70, not until you choose to be. So stand up. Make the call. Open the door. Whatever saving yourself looks like, do it now. Because the only thing worse than losing someone is losing the chance to come home. And me, I'm finally home.